The sound of my chisel scraping against old paint at 2 in the morning should have been therapeutic. Instead, it felt like I was carving away pieces of my own sanity. The garage light cast harsh shadows across the 1972 Chris Craft I'd been restoring for the past 6 months, back when I still believed my wife Clara worked late because she cared about her career, not because she was spreading her legs for some tech. Bro with a yacht. I heard her Honda pull into the driveway, engine ticking as it cooled. Through the garage window, I watched her sit in the driver's seat for a full minute, checking her reflection in the rearview mirror, fixing her lipstick. The same shade she'd stopped wearing around me months ago. "Working late again?" I called out as she walked through the kitchen door, not bothering to look up from the boat's hull. "Quarterly crunch," she said, the lie rolling off her tongue like she'd practiced it. "You know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. Clara Mercer, ambitious marketing coordinator at Coastal Tech Solutions, had been crunching something all right. Just not spreadsheets. She appeared in the garage doorway, still in her business attire, a black pencil skirt that hugged her curves, and a silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly beer budget. Her blonde hair was slightly mussed despite her car mirror touch-up session. "You're up late," she said, crossing her arms. "Couldn't sleep." I finally looked at her, noting the smudged mascara and the faint hickey on her neck that her concealer hadn't quite covered. Funny thing about insomnia, gives you time to think. Clara shifted uncomfortably. "Think about what?" "About us. About where we're going." I set down my tools and wiped my hands on a shop rag. "About honesty." Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt? Fear? Or maybe just annoyance that I was keeping her from her post-affair shower. "Eli, what's this about?" I'd been married to Clara for 4 years, together for 6. I knew her tells, the way she touched her earring when she lied, how her voice got slightly higher when she was defensive. Right now, she was doing both. "I think we need to have an honest conversation about our marriage," I said. Clara's face went pale. For a moment, I thought she might confess everything. Instead, she took a deep breath and looked me straight in the eye. "I like you, Eli. I really do. But I'm not in love with you anymore." The words hit like a punch to the gut, even though I'd been expecting them. What I hadn't expected was the casual way she delivered them, like she was commenting on the weather. "Well," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I appreciate the honesty." "I just think we've grown apart," she continued, warming to her theme now that I hadn't exploded. "We want different things. You're content with your boat restoration business and your beer at Mick's Bar. I want more. Right, like Lucas Dre's trust fund and his 40-foot yacht moored at the marina." "So what are you suggesting?" I asked. Clara looked relieved that I was taking it so well. Poor thing had no idea what was coming. "Maybe we should take a break. Figure things out separately. Or," I said, "we could try something else. Since you're being so honest tonight, why don't we just be honest about everything? No more pretending we're happily married. No more fake affection. We'll be roommates until we figure out the logistics." She blinked, clearly not expecting this response. "Roommates?" "Exactly. You want honesty? You've got it. I'll stop pretending I don't know you're screwing around, and you can stop pretending you give a damn about this marriage." Clara's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "I never said I was—" "Save it." I turned back to my boat. "We're adults. Let's act like it." The next morning, I made coffee for one. When Clara came downstairs in her silk pajamas, the ones she used to wear for me, I was already dressed and reading the newspaper at the kitchen table. "Good morning," she said tentatively. I looked up briefly. "Morning, roommate." Her face fell. She'd probably expected me to apologize for the night before, to beg her to work things out. Instead, I went back to reading about the local fishing tournament while drinking my coffee. Clara poured herself a cup and sat across from me. "Eli, about last night." "What about it?" "You were honest. I appreciate that." I folded the paper and stood. "I've got a client coming by at 9 to look at a Boston whaler. Try to keep the noise down if you bring anyone home." I left her sitting there, mouth agape, and headed to my workshop. Through the window, I watched her pace around the kitchen for 10 minutes before finally getting ready for work. The Cold War had begun. Over the next week, I perfected the art of polite indifference. When Clara tried to start conversations, I responded with the enthusiasm of someone discussing tax forms. When she cooked dinner, I thanked her like I would thank a helpful stranger. When she wore her the most alluring outfits around the house, I didn't even glance up from whatever boat manual I was reading. The effect was devastating. Clara, who thrived on attention and drama, was withering under my complete emotional detachment. She started staying out later, probably venting to her girlfriends Leah and Sophie about what a cold bastard her husband had become. Good. Let them talk. Friday evening, I was having a beer at the Salt and Knot when Mrs. Greeley, our 70-year-old neighbor and the town's unofficial information network, slid onto the bar stool next to me. "Evening, Eli," she said, ordering her usual whiskey sour. "Mrs. Greeley." I nodded politely. The old woman had been watching over Willow Bay's residence for decades, and she saw everything. "Notice Clara's been keeping late hours lately," she said casually. "Work's been busy, Thierry." Greeley gave me a look that said she wasn't buying it. "Saw her at the marina last night around 11. She wasn't alone." My grip tightened on my beer bottle, but I kept my expression neutral. "Is that so?" Tall fellow. Expensive clothes. Driving one of those fancy German cars. She leaned closer. "They were on that big white yacht. The one belongs to that Lucas boy. Lucas Dre." I knew the name from Clara's work stories. The golden boy of Coastal Tech Solutions, heir to some Boston real estate fortune, who'd moved to Willow Bay 6 months ago to disrupt the local tech scene. Around the same time, Clara had started working late. "Interesting," I said. Mrs. Greeley patted my arm sympathetically. "Thought you should know, dear." That night, I lay awake listening to Clara come home at 1:30 a.m. She was trying to be quiet, but the old Victorian house betrayed every footstep. I heard her pause outside our bedroom door. We'd been sleeping separately since our honest conversation, before continuing to the guest room. In the morning, I found her smartwatch on the kitchen counter. She'd obviously forgotten it in her rush to shower off the scent of her lover. The screen lit up when I picked it up, showing several text notifications. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was incredible. L quote, meet me at the usual place. I have something special planned. L. Your husband doesn't deserve you. Soon we can be together properly. L. I set the watch back down exactly where I'd found it and went to make my coffee. When Clara came downstairs 20 minutes later, her hair still damp from the shower, she immediately spotted the watch. "Oh, thank God, I thought I'd lost it." She grabbed it quickly, but not before noticing my knowing smile. "Careful with expensive electronics," I said mildly. "Never know what kind of information they might contain." Clara went white. "Eli, I can explain." "No need. We're just roommates, remember? Your personal life is your business." I finished my coffee and headed for the door. "Just remember, honesty goes both ways." I left her standing there, clutching her smartwatch like a lifeline, and went to work on a beautiful 1965 Bertram that needed a complete engine rebuild. Honest work for an honest man. But as I worked, my mind was already planning. Clara wanted to play games? Fine. I'd spent 6 years in the Marines before starting my restoration business. I knew something about strategy, about patience, about waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Clara Mercer was about to learn that some roommates were more dangerous than others. Mick's Bar, the Salt and Knot, was the kind of place where Willow Bay's working class came to drink away their troubles and share gossip that would make the town's social media groups explode. Mick himself was a former Boston cop who'd moved to Maine after taking early retirement. Something about a shooting that went bad, though he never talked about it. I'd been coming here 3 nights a week for the past 2 years, and Mick had become something like a friend. He had the bartender's gift of listening without judging, and the cop's instinct for reading people. "You look like hell," he said, sliding a Budweiser across the scarred wooden bar. "Thanks. You really know how to make a guy feel special." Mick's weathered face cracked into a grin. "Seriously though, what's eating you?" I took a long pull of beer and considered how much to tell him. Mick had been married once, divorced badly, and had strong opinions about cheating spouses. "Clara and I are having some issues," I said finally. "The working late kind of issues." I looked at him sharply. "You know, Eli, this is a town of 8,000 people. When the pretty marketing girl from Coastal Tech starts showing up at the marina with Lucas Dre, people notice." Mick polished a glass with practiced efficiency. "Question is, what are you going to do about it?" "What would you do?" Me? I'd probably do something stupid and end up in jail. He set down the glass and leaned on the bar. But you're smarter than me. You'll figure out the right play. Before I could respond, a woman slid onto the stool next to me. She was attractive in a hard-edged way, bleached blonde hair, too much makeup, and the look of someone who'd been disappointed by men more than once. "You're Eli Mercer," she said. It wasn't a question. "Do we know each other?" Kara Walsh. She extended a manicured hand. "I used to date Lucas Dre." The pieces clicked into place. This was the woman Lucas had dumped about 7 months ago, right around the time he'd started sniffing around my wife. "Buy you a drink?" I offered. "Vodka tonic, top shelf." Mick raised an eyebrow but poured the drink without comment. Kara took a sip and studied me with calculating eyes. "So your wife's the latest conquest," she said. "Apparently. You know what he calls them? His projects. Like they're boats he's fixing up." Kara's voice carried years of accumulated bitterness. "He's got a whole system. Finds married women who are bored or ambitious or both. Makes them feel special. Takes pictures." My blood went cold. "Pictures?" "Oh yeah. Lucas is a collector. He's got a whole digital album of his conquests. Photos, videos, text messages. Keeps them as trophies." She finished half her drink in one gulp. "Your wife's probably already in there." I forced myself to stay calm, but inside I was seeing red. Bad enough that Clara was cheating. But the thought of this trust fund asshole treating her like a trophy, sharing intimate photos with his rich boyfriends, that crossed a line. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Kara smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. "Because Lucas Dre is a predator who thinks his money makes him untouchable. And because I've been waiting for the right opportunity to watch him burn." She finished her drink and stood. "He keeps his boat at Slip 47. Usually takes his projects there Tuesday and Thursday nights around 10. She dropped a 20 on the bar. "Good luck, Eli. Make it count." After she left, Mick and I sat in silence for a few minutes. "You're not going to do anything stupid, are you?" he asked finally. "Define stupid." "Anything that involves me having to visit you in county lockup." I managed a laugh. "No promises." Tuesday night, I parked my pickup in the marina's overflow lot and walked casually toward the docks. Slip 47 was at the end of the furthest pier, where the biggest and most expensive boats were moored. Lucas's yacht, a gleaming white sunseeker that probably cost more than my house, was lit up like a Christmas tree. I could hear music and laughter coming from the main cabin. Through the large windows, I could see Clara in a red dress I'd never seen before, laughing at something Lucas was saying. He was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, artificially tanned, with the kind of perfectly styled hair that screamed expensive salon. There were other people on the boat, maybe 6 or 8, all dressed like they'd stepped out of a yacht club brochure. Clara fit right in, playing the part of the sophisticated woman about town rather than the small-town married woman she actually was. I watched for about 20 minutes, taking photos with my phone's zoom lens. Not for any legal reason, Maine was a no-fault divorce state, but because I wanted Clara to know that I knew. When you're planning a war, intelligence is everything. Around 11, the party started breaking up. I retreated to my truck and waited. Sure enough, Clara and Lucas were among the last to leave the boat. But instead of heading to the parking lot, they walked toward the harbor master's office, where Lucas apparently kept a BMW convertible. They were all over each other, hands roaming, mouths locked together like teenagers. Clara, my wife of 4 years, was pressed against the side of his car while he whispered something in her ear that made her giggle. I started my engine and drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. Clara came home at 2:15 a.m., reeking of expensive cologne and trying to walk quietly in heels. I was waiting in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee and my laptop open. "You're up late," she said, trying to sound casual. "Couldn't sleep." "Too much coffee." I gestured at the laptop screen, which showed the marina's webcam feed. "Been watching the boats come and go. Amazing what you can see with these new high-definition cameras." Clara went very still. "What do you mean?" "Oh, just that technology is incredible these days. You can zoom in, take screenshots, even record video." I closed the laptop and smiled. The harbor master installed them last month to prevent theft. They record everything. I stood and walked past her toward the stairs, pausing just long enough to add, "Sleep well, roommate. Try not to wake me when you shower off the cologne." The next morning, Clara was a nervous wreck. She kept checking her phone, jumping every time it buzzed, and shooting worried glances in my direction. I maintained my polite indifference, but inside, I was savoring every moment of her discomfort. Around noon, she finally cracked. "Eli, we need to talk." I looked up from the boat engine I was rebuilding. About what? About us. About everything. I thought we covered that already. "You're not in love with me. We're roommates until we figure out the logistics." I turned back to the engine. "Unless there's something else you want to be honest about?" Clara's face cycled through several emotions: guilt, fear, anger, and finally resignation. "I've been seeing someone," she said quietly. "I know." "You know?" "Clara, this is Willow Bay. Population 8,000. When you start playing grab-ass with Lucas Dre at the marina, people notice." I straightened up and wiped my hands on a rag. "The question is, what do you want to do about it?" She looked stunned. "You're not angry?" "Why would I be angry? You told me you weren't in love with me. At least you're being consistent." I shrugged. Though I have to say, Lucas Dre is an interesting choice. Rich boy with daddy issues and a reputation for collecting married women like baseball cards. Clara flinched. "It's not like that." "No? What's it like then?" "He cares about me. He sees my potential, wants to help me succeed." I laughed, and it wasn't a nice sound. "Right. I'm sure his intentions are purely professional. You don't understand. Lucas is connected. He could help me move to Boston, get a real job with a real company. And all you have to do is spread your legs for him." Clara's face went red. "That's not fair? True? Both?" I picked up a wrench and hefted it thoughtfully. "Here's what I understand, Clara. You're bored with our life. You think you deserve better. And Lucas Dre represents everything you think you want. Money, status, excitement. Maybe I do deserve better. Maybe you do. But here's the thing about guys like Lucas. They don't marry their projects. They play with them until they get bored, then move on to the next shiny toy." I set down the wrench and looked her in the eye. "But hey, maybe you'll be the exception." Clara stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away without another word. That evening, I called Mick and asked him to meet me at the bar. I had a feeling I was going to need an alibi for what came next. The thing about small towns is that everyone knows everyone else's business, but they pretend they don't until it becomes impossible to ignore. By Thursday, half of Willow Bay knew that Clara Mercer was stepping out on her husband with the rich boy from Boston. I knew this because Mrs. Greeley had made it her personal mission to keep me informed of every whispered conversation, every knowing look, every social media post that mentioned my wife's name. "That Leah girl posted pictures from some fancy restaurant in Portland," she reported over coffee at Murphy's Diner. "Your Clara was there with Mr. Moneybags, looking cozy." Leah Morrison was Clara's best friend and biggest enabler, a wannabe influencer who documented every moment of her life on Instagram and Facebook. She worked as a receptionist at a dental office but acted like she was running a Fortune 500 company. "Sophie was there too," Mrs. Greeley continued. "The three of them, and that Lucas boy, living it up on his dime." Sophie Chen was Clara's work friend, another ambitious 20-something who thought she was destined for bigger things than coastal tech solutions. Together, the three women formed a little clique of mutual validation and shared delusions of grandeur. "Interesting," I said, filing the information away. "What are you going to do about it, dear?" I smiled. "Nothing illegal, Mrs. Greeley. Don't worry about that." But I was going to do something. The question was, what would hurt the most, while staying on the right side of the law? That afternoon, I drove to Portland and visited a private investigator I'd found online. Janet Torres was a former state trooper who specialized in domestic cases. Her office was in a strip mall between a tax preparation service and a Chinese restaurant. "I need documentation," I told her after explaining the situation. "Photos, financial records, communication logs, everything admissible in court." "Planning to take her for everything?" Janet asked, making notes on a legal pad. "Maine's a no-fault state. I just want to make sure she doesn't try to claim I was abusive or controlling when this goes public." Janet nodded. "Smart. A lot of cheaters try to rewrite history, make themselves the victim. Having documentation prevents that." "How long?" "Give me a week. I'll have everything you need." I paid her retainer and drove back to Willow Bay, feeling better than I had in months. For the first time since this whole mess started, I was taking action instead of just reacting. That evening, Clara came home around 7 with shopping bags from expensive stores I knew we couldn't afford. New clothes? I asked, not looking up from the newspaper. A few things. I needed to update my wardrobe for work. Must be nice having someone else pay for it. Clara froze halfway up the stairs. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just that marketing coordinators must make more than I thought if you can afford Nordstrom on a Tuesday. I used my credit card. Which credit card? The one connected to our joint account? I finally looked at her. The one I can see all the transactions for online? Clara's face went white. She'd obviously forgotten about our shared banking. Eli, I can explain. No need. Like I said, you're an adult. Just remember that adultery might not affect divorce proceedings in Maine, but financial infidelity sure does. I went back to reading the paper, but I could feel her staring at me from the stairs. What's that supposed to mean? She asked again. It means you might want to think carefully about whose money you're spending on your boyfriend. Clara stomped up the stairs without another word. 20 minutes later, I heard her on the phone with someone, her voice high and agitated. Probably calling Lucas to complain about her mean husband. Friday night, I was at the Salt and Knot when Leah and Sophie walked in. They spotted me immediately and whispered to each other before Leah approached the bar. Hi, Eli, she said with fake sweetness. How are you holding up? Just fine, Leah. Thanks for asking. She ordered a cosmopolitan, because of course she did, and tried to look sympathetic. I know things have been hard with Clara working so much lately. Has she been working? I hadn't noticed. Leah's smile faltered. Well, you know, the new project at Coastal Tech has everyone putting in extra hours. Right. The project. I took a sip of beer. Tell me, what exactly does this project involve? Because from what I can see, it mostly involves expensive dinners and yacht parties. Sophie had joined us by now, looking uncomfortable. She was the smarter of Clara's two friends and probably sensed where this conversation was heading. Maybe we should go, Sophie suggested. No, I'm curious, I said. See, I've been wondering something. Clara's been telling me she's working late on this big project, but when I called her office last week, they said she'd left early for a doctor's appointment. Both women exchanged glances. And then Mrs. Greeley mentioned seeing her at the marina on a Tuesday night, which is weird because I thought she was supposed to be at that marketing conference in Augusta. Leah's cosmopolitan arrived, and she took a large gulp. The thing is, I continued conversationally, I'm starting to think maybe Clara hasn't been entirely honest with me about her work schedule. What do you think? I think maybe you should talk to your wife, Sophie said carefully. Oh, I have. She told me she likes me but isn't in love with me anymore. Very honest of her. I smiled. Of course, she left out the part about Lucas Dre, but I guess that's just a detail. Leah choked on her drink. Sophie went pale. So here's my question, I said, leaning forward slightly. Are you two going to keep helping my wife lie to me? Or are we going to be adults about this situation? Eli, we never meant... Leah started. Save it. You've been covering for her, posting pictures on social media to make it look like innocent girls' nights out, probably helping her come up with excuses to tell me. I finished my beer and stood. Just remember, when this all comes out, and it will come out, people are going to remember who was helping her lie. I dropped a 20 on the bar and walked out, leaving them sitting there looking like they'd been slapped. Saturday morning, I got a call from Janet Torres. I've got some preliminary information, she said. Can you meet me this afternoon? We met at a coffee shop in Freeport, far enough from Willow Bay to avoid curious eyes. Janet spread a folder of photographs and documents across the table between us. Your wife's been busy, she said. 3 dinners at expensive restaurants, 2 overnight trips to Boston that she told her office were personal days, and about 6 visits to Lucas Dre's yacht. The photos were damning. Clara and Lucas holding hands across a restaurant table. Clara getting into his BMW wearing an overnight bag. Clara and Lucas kissing on the deck of his yacht while other people watched and laughed. There's more, Janet said. I did some digging into Mr. Dre's background. This isn't his first married woman. In Boston, he had affairs with at least 3 wives of business associates. There was some kind of scandal at his last company. Intimate harassment allegations that got buried by his family's lawyers. What kind of allegations? The usual. promising career advancement in exchange for intimate favors, creating hostile work environments for women who rejected him, sharing intimate photos without consent. Janet's expression was grim. Guy's a predator who uses his money and connections to avoid consequences. I studied the photos, feeling my anger crystallize into something colder and more focused. How much do I owe you? We're just getting started. Give me another week and I'll have everything you need to bury both of them. That evening, Clara came home early for the first time in weeks. She was nervous, fidgeting with her jewelry and avoiding eye contact. "Eli, we need to talk," she said. "About what?" "About us. About our future." She sat down across from me at the kitchen table. "I think it would be best if we separated officially. I could move in with Leah temporarily while we work out the details." "Interesting timing," I said. "What brought this on?" "I just think we've grown too far apart to fix things. Or maybe Lucas is getting impatient and wants you available full-time." Clara flinched. "This isn't about Lucas." "No? Then why are you wearing the bracelet he bought you? The one that matches the earrings from last week?" She instinctively touched the jewelry, then caught herself. "I think you should know," I said calmly, "that I've hired a private investigator." Clara went white. "You what?" "Janet Torres, former state trooper. She's very thorough." I smiled. "Amazing what you can find out when you actually look." "Eli, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You want out of this marriage so you can be with your rich boyfriend. That's fine. But you're not going to rewrite history and make me the bad guy." Clara's hands were shaking. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing illegal, nothing unethical. But I'm not going to let you and Lucas destroy my reputation while you play house." I stood and headed for the stairs. "Where are you going?" she called after me. "To bed. Unlike some people, I don't have anywhere else to be." As I climbed the stairs, I could hear Clara frantically dialing her phone, probably calling Lucas to warn him that the game had changed. Good. Let them sweat. The real fun was just beginning. Sunday morning brought the first real consequence of my conversation with Leah and Sophie. I was having coffee and reading the paper when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Marcus from Coastal Tech. Heard you've been harassing Clara's friends. Back off or we'll have problems. Marcus." That would be Marcus Webb, Lucas's buddy from the tech company and apparently his designated enforcer. I'd heard Clara mention him, another Boston transplant who thought his computer science degree made him tough. I screenshot the text and forwarded it to Janet Torres with a note. "Harassment and intimidation. Please document." Then I replied to Marcus, "Don't know who you are, friend, but threatening someone's husband probably isn't the smartest career move." My phone rang 30 seconds later. "Listen, asshole," a nasal voice said without preamble. "Lucas is my friend, and Clara deserves better than some loser boat mechanic who can't satisfy his wife." "Is that so?" I kept my voice calm. "And you are?" "Marcus Webb. I work with Clara at Coastal Tech." "Ah, the computer programmer. Tell me, Marcus, does your HR department know you're making threatening phone calls on behalf of your buddy's extramarital affair?" Silence. "Because I'm recording this conversation," I lied smoothly. "And I'm pretty sure most companies frown on employees involving themselves in domestic disputes." "You can't what? Protect myself from harassment? Document threats? I think you'll find I can do exactly that." I paused for effect. "Now, unless you want to explain to your boss why you're threatening customers, my boat restoration business does work for several Coastal Tech employees. I suggest you stay out of my marriage." I hung up and immediately called Janet Torres. "They're getting sloppy," she said after I filled her in. "Desperate people make mistakes." "What kind of mistakes?" "The kind that give us leverage. I'll make some calls, see what I can find out about this Marcus character and his relationship with Lucas Dre." That afternoon, I decided to take a more direct approach. I drove to the marina and walked out to Slip 47, where Lucas's yacht was moored. The boat was empty, but I could see expensive electronics through the windows, radar equipment, GPS systems, a high-end sound system. I didn't touch anything. I just stood there for a few minutes, making sure the security cameras caught me looking around. Then I walked back to my truck and drove home. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "Stay away from my boat," Lucas Dre's voice was tight with anger. "Your boat?" I was just admiring it. Beautiful craftsmanship, Must have cost, what, 2 million? I'm warning you? Warning me? About what? Looking at boats in a public marina? I laughed. Lucas, buddy, you're going to have to be more specific. I know what you're trying to do. What am I trying to do? Intimidate Clara. Make her afraid to leave you. Clara's a grown woman. She can leave anytime she wants. Hell, I'll help her pack. I paused. But if she's going to leave, she's going to do it honestly. No more lies, no more sneaking around, no more spending our money on clothes to impress her boyfriend. Clara told me you were controlling. Did she? That's interesting, because I've been giving her complete freedom to make her own choices. The only thing I've controlled is my own response to those choices. Lucas was quiet for a moment. What do you want? I want honesty, from both of you. If you want to be together, be together. But stop treating me like I'm stupid. And if we do that, then we can all move on with our lives like adults. I hung up, knowing full well that neither of them was capable of that level of maturity. That evening, Clara came home with red eyes and a defiant expression. I'm moving out, she announced. Leah said I can stay with her until I find my own place. When? This weekend. Fine. I'll help you pack. Clara looked surprised. You will? Of course. The sooner we're honest about this situation, the better for everyone. She studied my face suspiciously. You're not going to try to stop me? Why would I? You told me you're not in love with me. You've been cheating on me for months. Staying married would be pointless. I haven't been... I held up my phone, showing her one of Janet's photographs, Clara and Lucas kissing on his yacht deck. Right, she said quietly. Clara, I'm not angry that you want out of this marriage. I'm angry that you've been lying to me and treating me like an idiot. I pocketed the phone. If you'd been honest from the beginning, we could have handled this like adults. I was trying to protect your feelings. By spending our money on clothes to wear for your boyfriend? By lying about where you were every night? By letting your friends help you deceive me? Clara had no answer for that. Pack whatever you want, I said. I'll have divorce papers drawn up this week. That night, I could hear Clara on the phone with Lucas, her voice carrying through the thin walls of our old house. He's being too reasonable, she was saying. It's creepy. He should be angry, should be fighting for me. I almost laughed. Clara was so used to drama, to men fighting over her, that my calm acceptance of reality felt wrong to her. Monday morning, Janet Torres called with an update. I've got everything you need, she said. Photos, financial records, communication logs, plus some interesting information about Lucas Dre's business dealings. What kind of information? The kind that suggests his money might not be as clean as it appears. I found connections to some shell companies that were involved in a tax evasion scheme in Boston. Nothing proven, but enough to make the IRS very interested if someone were to tip them off. Interesting. There's more. That Marcus Webb character? He's been using company resources to help Lucas with personal projects, including running background checks on you using Coastal Tech's security software. Is that legal? Absolutely not. It's a federal crime to use business computer systems for personal investigations without proper authorization. I smiled. Can you document that? Already have. I've got screenshots of the searches and evidence linking them to Marcus's user account. What about Clara? She's been using company time and resources to plan her personal activities with Lucas. Long personal phone calls during work hours, using the company printer for personal documents, even booking personal travel through the company's corporate account. Enough to get her fired? More than enough. Especially if someone were to compile it all into a nice, neat report for her supervisor. I thought about that. Clara losing her job would hurt, but it might also make her more dependent on Lucas, which could actually strengthen their relationship. Hold off on that for now, I said. I want to see how this plays out naturally. Wednesday evening, Clara started packing. I helped carry boxes to her car, maintaining the same polite distance I'd shown for weeks. She kept glancing at me nervously, clearly expecting some kind of emotional outburst. That's the last of it, she said, loading her final suitcase into her Honda. Drive safe, I said. She hesitated at the car door. Eli, I want you to know, don't. Whatever you're about to say, just don't. I looked at her steadily. We both know how we got here. Let's leave it at that. Clara drove away without another word. I went back inside and poured myself a whiskey, then sat in my favorite chair and called Mick. "She's gone," I said when he answered. "How do you feel?" "Relieved. And ready for phase 2. Phase 2? The part where they learn that actions have consequences. Mick was quiet for a moment. "Just remember what I said about not doing anything stupid. Don't worry. I'm not going to break any laws. That's not what I'm worried about." Thursday morning, I woke up in my own house for the first time in months without having to wonder where my wife had spent the night or what lies she'd tell me about it. The freedom was intoxicating. I made coffee, read the paper, and then called my lawyer to start divorce proceedings. Then I called Janet Torres. "Time for phase 2, I said. "What did you have in mind?" "I think it's time Lucas Dre learned what happens when you mess with the wrong man's wife." "What are you thinking?" "Nothing illegal, nothing violent, but something that will make him understand that his money can't protect him from every consequence." "I'm listening." I smiled, looking out at Willow Bay's harbor, where Lucas's yacht sat gleaming in the morning sun. "How do you feel about a little public education campaign?" The beauty of living in a small town is that everyone knows everyone else's business, but they're usually too polite to say anything directly. That social contract was about to get very interesting. I started with Mrs. Greeley, because she was the town's most efficient information distribution system. Over coffee at Murphy's Diner, I showed her Janet's photographs. "I want people to know the truth," I told her. "Not gossip, not speculation, just facts." Mrs. Greeley studied the photos with the intensity of a detective examining evidence. "That poor girl. She has no idea what she's gotten herself into." "What do you mean?" "Lucas Dre. I've been asking around about him since this all started." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "He did the same thing in Boston. Seduced married women, made them promises, then moved on when he got bored, left a trail of broken marriages behind him." "How do you know this?" "My sister lives in Boston. She knows people in Lucas's social circle." Mrs. Greeley's expression was grim. "He's a predator, Eli. And your Clara is just his latest victim." I felt a flicker of sympathy for my wife, but it died quickly. Clara was an adult who'd made her choices. Now she'd have to live with the consequences. "What are you going to do?" Mrs. Greeley asked. "Make sure everyone knows exactly who they're dealing with." That afternoon, I visited Tom Bradley, the editor of the Willow Bay Weekly. Tom was a former Portland Press-Herald reporter who'd moved to town 5 years ago to run the local paper. He had a nose for real stories and the integrity to tell them accurately. "I've got a story for you," I said, spreading Janet's documentation across his desk. Tom examined everything carefully: the photos, the financial records, the evidence of Lucas's pattern of behavior. "This is solid work," he said finally. "But I need to ask, what's your goal here?" "I want people to know the truth about Lucas Dre. Not just that he's sleeping with my wife, but what kind of man he really is." "And Clara?" "Clara made her choice. But she deserves to know what she's really gotten herself into." Tom nodded slowly. "I can work with this. Give me a week to verify everything independently." "Fair enough." That evening, I drove to the Salt and Knot for my usual beer and found half the bar staring at me with a mixture of sympathy and curiosity. Word was clearly getting around. Mick slid a Budweiser across the bar without being asked. "Heard Clara moved out." News travels fast. "You okay?" "Better than okay. For the first time in months, I know exactly where I stand." "And where's that?" "Free to make my own choices about how to handle this situation." Mick gave me a worried look. "What kind of choices?" Before I could answer, the bar's door opened and Marcus Webb walked in. He spotted me immediately and approached with the swagger of someone who thought he was tougher than he actually was. "We need to talk," he said. "Do we?" I took a sip of beer without looking at him. "You're harassing Clara and Lucas. It needs to stop." The bar had gone quiet. Everyone was watching to see how this would play out. "Harassing them how?" I asked calmly. "Following them, taking pictures, threatening them." I turned to face him fully. "Marcus, right? The computer programmer?" "That's right." "Tell me something, Marcus. When you ran those illegal background checks on me using your company's security software, did you find anything interesting?" Marcus went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No? Because I have documentation showing that you accessed federal databases without authorization to investigate a private citizen. That's a felony. The bar was dead silent now. You're lying, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Would you like me to call the FBI field office in Portland and ask them to investigate? Marcus looked around the bar, suddenly realizing that he was surrounded by people who were very interested in this conversation. This isn't over, he said weakly. Yes, it is. I stood up, and Marcus instinctively took a step back. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go back to Lucas and Clara and tell them that I'm done playing games. If they want to be together, fine. But the lies and the harassment and the attempts to make me look like the bad guy stop now. Or what? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice expression. Or I stopped being reasonable. Marcus left without another word. The bar slowly returned to its normal noise level, but I could feel people glancing at me with new respect. Nicely handled, Mick said quietly. I'm just getting started. Friday morning, I got a call from Clara. Eli, we need to talk, she said. Her voice was strained. About what? About what you're doing. Marcus said you threatened him. I didn't threaten anyone. I just explained some facts about computer crimes and federal law. You can't keep harassing us. Harassing you? Clara, I haven't contacted you once since you moved out. I haven't called Lucas, haven't gone near his boat, haven't done anything except document the truth about our marriage. The truth? That you cheated on me with a man who has a history of seducing married women and then abandoning them. That your friends helped you lie to me. That you spent our money on clothes to wear for your boyfriend. Clara was quiet for a long moment. What do you want? I want you to stop trying to rewrite history. I want you to take responsibility for your choices. And I want you to understand that Lucas Dre isn't the man you think he is. What's that supposed to mean? Ask him about Boston. Ask him about the other married women. Ask him about the harassment allegations that his family's lawyers made disappear. You're lying. Am I? Then ask him. I hung up and went back to work on a 1968 Sea Ray that needed a new engine. Honest work for an honest man. That afternoon, Tom Bradley called. I've verified everything, he said. The story runs next Wednesday. What's the angle? Boston businessman's pattern of predatory behavior continues in Willow Bay. I interviewed 3 of his former victims in Boston, plus 2 women here who say he made inappropriate advances. Clara? I tried to reach her for comment, but she didn't return my calls. Wednesday morning, I was having coffee when my phone started ringing. The first call was from Mrs. Greeley. Have you seen the paper? She asked excitedly. Not yet. Front page, above the fold. Tom did a beautiful job. The second call was from Mick. Holy shit, Eli. You really went nuclear. The third call was from Clara, and she was crying. How could you do this to me? She sobbed. Do what? Tell the truth? You've humiliated me in front of the entire town. I didn't humiliate you, Clara. Your choices did that. Everyone's staring at me, whispering. I can't even go to work without people looking at me like I'm some kind of victim. Aren't you? That stopped her crying. What? Lucas Dre has done this before, multiple times. He finds married women, seduces them with promises of a better life, then moves on when he gets bored. You're not special to him, Clara. You're just the latest conquest. That's not true. Did you ask him about Boston? Silence. Did you ask him about the other women? More silence. He loves me, she said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. Maybe. Or maybe you're just convenient until something better comes along. I hung up and drove to the marina to buy a copy of the paper. Tom had done excellent work. The story was factual, well-sourced, and devastating. Lucas Dre was portrayed exactly as he was, a wealthy predator who used his money and status to exploit vulnerable women. Clara was mentioned, but not by name. She was simply a local married woman who had become involved with Dre. The focus was on Lucas's pattern of behavior, not on any individual victim. By Thursday, the story had been picked up by the Portland papers and several online news sites. Lucas Dre was suddenly famous in all the wrong ways. Friday afternoon, I was working in my shop when a BMW convertible pulled into my driveway. Lucas Dre got out, and he looked like hell, unshaven, rumpled clothes, dark circles under his eyes. We need to talk, he said. I set down my tools and wiped my hands on a rag. Do we? You've destroyed my reputation. My family's lawyers are threatening to cut me off if I don't fix this. Fix what? I didn't make you seduce married women. I didn't make you harass employees who rejected your advances. I just made sure people knew the truth about what kind of man you are. That newspaper story was full of lies. Was it? Which part was false? Lucas couldn't answer that. Here's what I think happened, I said conversationally. You came to Willow Bay thinking you could play the same games you played in Boston. Small town, unsophisticated people, no one would dare challenge someone with your money and connections. But you made a mistake. You picked the wrong man's wife. Lucas tried to look tough, but he was clearly out of his element. What do you want? I want you to leave town. I want you to stay away from Clara. And I want you to understand that if you ever try anything like this again, the consequences will be much worse. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm educating you. I smiled. You see, Lucas, you've been playing games with people who had something to lose. But I don't have anything to lose anymore. My marriage is over. My reputation is intact. And I have all the documentation I need to make your life very uncomfortable if you don't learn from this experience. Lucas stared at me for a long moment, then got back in his car without another word. That evening, Clara called one last time. He's leaving, she said quietly. I know. He said he never loved me, that I was just convenient. I felt a flicker of sympathy, but I pushed it down. I'm sorry you had to learn it this way. I've lost everything. My marriage, my reputation, my friends. You made your choices, Clara. I know. She was crying again. I'm sorry, Eli. For all of it. I know you are. Is there any chance? No. She hung up and I poured myself a whiskey. Outside, Willow Bay's harbor was calm under the evening stars. Lucas Dre's yacht was gone, the slip empty for the first time in months. I raised my glass to the empty harbor and smiled. Sometimes the good guys do win,